Okay guys, so here I am outside Barcelona's new Nou Camp. I'm definitely going to try and get that one through the filter. Okay, I'm getting used to this now. Take two. Well, hello again guys, or should that be Hola, for the first time from the new Nou Camp. Although, to be honest, it looks exactly the same as it did 2 years ago when I was last here, and that is a building site. Yeah, they think it's going to be ready for the start of next season. I'm not so sure, not unless Barry Taylor sends an SOS to Dennis Patterson, but we're not here to talk about the construction of stadiums. This video will be my Newcastle United end of season awards. I'll also, at the very end, just so the information is as timely as can possibly be, give a little update on transfers and the current state of play in that regard. But for now, I've got two aims: one, to get through the awards without being interrupted by the Spanish construction staff there behind us, and two, to find somewhere with a palm chilling cabeza. Let's go. Now, my first category is game of the season. No, not that one. We'll get to that. And when I picked this, I wanted to be true to myself. I didn't look back over a long list or even go back over the diary of the season I do when I award matches marks out of 10. No, I wanted to go off instinct in the game which stood out in my mind, and it was a competitive field. Goodness, wow, it's been a wonderful season. But the one I'm going to pick is Arsenal 0, Newcastle 2 in the semi-final first leg of the Carabao Cup in January. Now, as we negotiate way past the it's more expensive inside, guys. I know I've just bought two tops for my children. I wish I'd realised there was a knockoff store outside. But anyway, yeah, let's walk into Camp Barca and we'll talk about Newcastle beating Arsenal. Before we do, I will get there. I'll just insert. I had a go at that myself earlier. I'm going to post the video in just a second. I'll show you how I did get on. But yeah, it is quite informative, the fact that Keith Downey is in Turkey having his hair and teeth done, and I'm taking penalties against a machine. Gives you a little insight as to where Newcastle's transfer business is currently at. Nowhere. Before game of the season, this is how I got on.
Top corner. Perfect.
Now, if that semi-final had gone to penalties, I honestly would have put my hand up. But it didn't, and it didn't because Newcastle were brilliant over the two legs. But it was the first leg in particular. It was at the end of the week, the three-peak challenge. Now, this game was the last of those three peaks. The first two had been negotiated successfully, games I was at Old Trafford and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And the reason I picked this as my game of the season, the one that stands out, the one that first comes to mind, is that because I went there believing Newcastle would win. I'd never done that before at the Emirates, and that was for good reason. They'd only won once there before, Andy Carroll's header. I actually watched that game from a hotel room in Colombo, in Sri Lanka. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Here I am in Spain talking about that night in North London. And it was going there with a confidence from a Newcastle perspective that means it stands out for me. And I say that because when Eddie Howe came into Newcastle, he walked into a wall. He walked into several walls, goodness. For every big venue, big stadium in the country, there was a negative stat attached to it from a Newcastle perspective that went back generations in terms of the defeats they'd suffered there. There was nothing but trauma attached to these big grounds, the Emirates included. So to go there thinking they would win, and then for them to do so, and to do so in the manner they did, is the reason it stands out as my game of the season. They started on the front foot. They took the game to Arsenal. Isak and Gordon set the tone from the off. They were superb. They were the justifiable scorers on the night. Their goals were reward for the way they terrorised Arsenal. But not just that, it was two performances in one. They got the 2-goal lead. They then threatened early in the second half to go and get a third. But then, for the last half hour, have you ever seen defensive resilience in a band of brothers? A performance like that, the resistance, Dan Burn, Sven Botman, those in midfield, it was absolutely incredible. The game was on terrestrial television, and I had folk who wouldn't ordinarily be Newcastle fans say they were on the sofa kicking and heading every ball. Newcastle captured the nation's imagination that night, and I thought it was, I've used this word already, so significant. It was for me, I said this at the time and I stand by it. It was Eddie Howe's greatest night as Newcastle manager. We'll get to the cup final, of course, but I hope you know what I mean by that point. It was a victory for management. He's long since had this Indian sign over Mikel Arteta, but that was the night in Arteta's own backyard, in Arsenal's own backyard, on a big occasion, in front of the biggest television audience Newcastle would have played in front of this season. To go there and do that, it was magnificent. And that is why it's my game of the season. Now, moment of the season. I said we'd get to it. A quick little insert though. This moment could very soon be surpassed when I do finally get an Estrella Damm in my hands. But no, my moment of the season. It goes back to Wembley. And it's not the moment Newcastle lifted the cup. It's not the moment Dan Burn headed the opening goal. It's not the moment Alexander Isak got the second. It's not the moment Eddie Howe returned and thrust the trophy up in front of you guys. It came in about the 84th or the 85th minute, as I just dodge a couple of boys playing football here. And I was sat in the press box, and it was lucky enough that the Newcastle fans were on that side of the stadium. It was about 84, 85 minutes when a noise started spreading around me, and a emotion, and it was the flags and the scarves, everything being whipped and waved again, and it was just this ocean of black and white around me. And that was the moment for me that it dawned on you guys, and it dawned on us that Newcastle were going to do it. I won't swear, but insert your own forward expletive here. It was that moment. They're going to win here. They're 2-0 up with 5 minutes to go in a cup final. And in that instance, that noise, that emotion, it felt like I was in a washing machine, and there was 70 years of dirty linen being cleansed all around me. It was quite incredible. And my wife and boys were in the stands behind me, and you know, I've always been quite firm on this, and it's true, it is. I'm a journalist. I'm pretty anaesthetised. It's story first, it's copy first. I'm okay with that. I've programmed myself to be like that. I don't deny it. I don't even try to be like that. It's just the way I am. But in that moment, and it feels quite emotional now thinking back to it, it was a moment. It's why it's moment of the season. It's just, the hairs are standing up on the back of my neck now, just remembering it. And it was, they're going to do this. A moment, a day I'd never really thought would arrive. 2 years previous against Manchester United, the Carabao Cup final defeat was the most inevitable thing ever. I went there believing they were going to get beaten. They did. It was different this time. I wasn't necessarily convinced they would win, but something felt different. And in that moment, 5 minutes from time, with just that movement, that noise. There was a greater noise in the 85th minute than there was on full time. A couple of people have said to me that they were not disappointed, but after full time felt a little bit like an exhale. That's because I think it dawned on everyone, that magical, come on back, it's moment, that magical moment. Please tell me below the line if you guys can remember it and felt what I did. It was incredible. I'll never, ever forget that point. Then Liverpool went and scored, and Newcastle lost the ball in the corner, and Liverpool were on a counter-attack, and again, insert your own forward expletive. That moment might have been rendered absolutely redundant and ridiculous. Liverpool had made it 2-2 and Newcastle hadn't gone on to win. But in summary, I hope I've made my point. When I think back over the entire season, if I could go back and relive 60 seconds again, it would be those 60 seconds. Magic. Next category, goal of the season. Now, before we get to that, it's like the Pico building site in Dusseldorf, isn't it, there behind us? If you guys had dreams and ambitions about coming back here next season in the Champions League, I think they'll still be playing up the road there in their temporary home. Now, there was talk of this stadium being ready for the start of next season. Not a chance, not just by looking at it visually and also talking to the folk around here. It's going to be January at the earliest, I think, before they play inside the new camp. And it's just as well, they've been awarded the 2030 World Cup and not the 28th European Championship, because one guy even said it'll be 2 years before it is actually completely finished. Now, that's not our concern, as I said at the start. And my concern for now is picking a goal of the season from that lot. Now, hello. Yeah, I'm having a good day. I'm having an even better day when I get to the ball around the corner, which is where we're now heading. It's in sight. Goal of the season. Now, again, the point I want to make is, if I watched back, and there is a video on YouTube, we can go back and watch all of Newcastle's goals from this season. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep to the spirit of, if I'm sat in a pub, a train, a plane, wherever it is, and someone says to me, what was the best Newcastle goal this season? I want to pick what I remember. And this goal for me was the standout winner. There was competition, and these are the only others I can really remember. I think there's been a lot of goals. Now, there was Sandro Tonali's 3 against Brentford, the 2 in the League Cup quarter-final that were tremendous goals, but they don't make the top spot on the podium because they both took slight deflections. And I don't like goals that are deflected. I really don't. I was at the Champions League final on Saturday night, and Desiree Doué, I've written thousands of words about him in the 48 hours since. He's wonderful. I love him. You know, him and Lamine Yamal, another fellow who resides just behind there, they're going to battle out the Ballon d'Or for the next decade. Can you believe Newcastle looked at Desiree Doué last year as well? Anyway, that's a whole entire other video. Players that got away. But his goal on Saturday night in Munich, it took a slight little nick. I didn't like that. Sandro Tonali's 2 against Brentford, the drill from outside the box took a slight deflection. Wonderful technique, incredible. Then the goal, which in my mind, you know, should be goal of the season, when he catches it on the volley at the Lees' end, it takes a bigger deflection. It probably was going in anyway. It's a shame it didn't go straight in, because it would have been the winner of this award. Then he's won against Brentford in the league. What a huge goal that was on reflection, by the way, in terms of getting those points towards the end of the season. He said afterwards he didn't mean it, so I'm sorry, Sandro, you know, 3 cheers for honesty, but it means you miss out on this prize. The other one, Alexander Isak against Liverpool, made the shortlist for Match of the Day's goal of the season. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a strike, a blast into the top corner. I don't like that sort of goal. I love that sort of goal, but it's more, that's an instinct thing. Bang out your feet. It was brilliant. It was wonderful. I'm not doing it down, but my pick is goal of the season. It's getting a bit blustery up on this viewing platform, so let's head down the stairs. It's Alexander Isak. Hello. It's Alexander Isak against Arsenal in the league. The header from Anthony Gordon's cross. And the reason I picked that is I was in the press box that day, and my view, my vantage, you've probably seen it in previous videos, it was perfect for that goal. I was right behind Isak's point of connection. And to witness that goal live, it was, and I picked this word, you know, I don't pick it lightly, it was exhilarating. It was exciting. It was like something you don't ordinarily experience now in football stadiums. You've still got the goals from distance and the nice intricate team moves, but how often do you see your right-footed winger on the right, crossing the ball first time, and a centre-forward rising and flashing it home at the Gallagher end, no less as well, first time? I just thought that goal was brilliant. And when I think back over the season, because of the uniqueness of it, because it was against Arsenal as well, and all of the rivalry that exists between those two teams and those two dugouts, that's my pick. And I'll be fascinated to know if you agree, because I don't even think it's close. It's the one that just jumps to mind straight away. It was a brilliant goal, and it was a brilliant moment too. Okay, so here we are finally, and 9 days on from saying that he wanted Newcastle to be quick and decisive with their transfer business. Yeah, teetotal Eddie Howe could probably do with one of these. So please forgive me, 2 seconds. Tremendous. Okay, player of the season. Who needs gear when you've got Spanish beer, hey? Right, player of the season, and I'm going to be true to what I've done all season with regards to the merit marks in ascending order. Now, you might disagree. This guy probably is, many of your pickers, the worthy recipient of the 3 stars, but the one in bronze position on the podium for Newcastle United player of the season for 24-25 in my own little world is Alexander Isak. Now, how can he not feature in the top 3? 27 goals this season, and not just that, it's been his durability as well. Now, you might think that's a little strange given that he ended the season with injury doubts and not being at his best. Of course, he missed that game down at Arsenal, didn't he? But he only missed 4 matches all season, and I was wrong when I said about Isak a couple of years ago that I had my doubts about him having that resistance and that durability to be Newcastle's striker, or anybody's striker over the course of a Premier League season. He's proven me wrong in that regard now, and he's done it 2 seasons on the bounce. And this year, he's been brilliant. Yes, his campaign probably was bookended by a bit of a sticky start, 1 goal in 7, and then he probably did see out the season not in his very best form. But what he did in the middle is, in large part, the reason that Newcastle do have the first domestic trophy in 70 years, the reason they are playing Champions League football again next season. I've already touched on that. 27 goals in all competitions, 23 in the Premier League, and he's shown himself to be that world-class player. He's shown himself to be the player whereby 150 million price tags don't feel fanciful. He's wonderful. He's got everything. I went out to Sweden just before the Carabao Cup final and spent a few days there getting to know the people who knew him best. And not just that, what I took away from that was, yes, this exceptional talent whose skill set isn't matched or married or bettered by anybody else in the world, really. He is totally unique. But it's the character as well. He is a good guy. He is super cool. And this season, he's proven to be, for Newcastle, somebody they can depend on. And I talk about the £150 million price tag. Well, no, he is priceless. He is irreplaceable. And Alexander Isak this year for Newcastle has shown himself to be that ultimate difference maker. But sadly, Alex, it's only 1 star. Now, I know I said the other categories I've awarded the honours on instinct, really, on what came to me first. Not this category. I've spent days, weeks even, deliberating in my mind as to who should get the 1, 2, 3. And the 2 players who were in silver in goal position, well, they were always, for me, the standout pair. And only really today have I come down on who is the winner. And the 2 stars, first of all, well, they go to, drum roll, they go to Dan Burn. How can he not be among the top 3? Now, a couple of years ago, I was at a dinner. It was the reunion of the 92-93 team, and Dan Burn was actually on my table. He'd got a ticket for him and his dad, who used to go to Newcastle matches during that era, and what a nice gift it was, and what a nice guy Dan is. Now, that evening, Dan Burn was sat next to John Beresford, the idea being put the 2 left-backs together in. At one point during the evening, the compere said not to alarm the rest of the room, but Dan Burn has sat with John Beresford, and John Beresford's telling him everything he knows about defending, which, yeah, now that was a cause for concern. Dan had a game 72 hours later. Thankfully, he took none of what John told him about defending into that match. But the point I make is that he was a left-back then, and that was the only place he could get into the team. Not only is he now playing at centre-half, he's the first choice centre-half. And if you speak to guys on the inside, as I often do, they won't tell you that Sven Botman's the best defender at the club. They love Sven Botman. They won't tell you that Fabian Schär's the best defender at the club. They love Fabian Schär. We're extending it across the back 4. They won't tell you that Lewis Hall or Tino Livramento or Kieran Trippier even is the best defender. They'll tell you it's Dan Burn, and that is for what he brings every day, Monday to Friday, and then again on his Saturday. He's just a colossus of a man, be that in the standards he sets on the training pitch, but then he takes it into a match as well. And has there been anybody this season who has stood firmer and who has stood stronger, who has set that standard, who has taken everybody else with him? Since he came into the club, Kieran Trippier has been Newcastle's ultimate standard bearer. Now, Trippier has been very good this season when he has played, and he's had those moments of inspiration, and Trippier is someone I've still got all the time in the world for. But Dan Burn has taken on that mantle in terms of being that player who drags everybody else with him, and he's done it 37 out of 38 matches this season. And for everything else and all of the narrative that has gone with it, and we might just come back to that with another award at the very end, how can Dan Burn not be on the podium? But he only gets 2 stars, and if you'd said that to me 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, I might not have believed that in my own mind. Dan Burn was always going to be the winner, because when it comes to reflecting on matches week on week, he is always up there, and he's had those moments to go with it. The header in the Carabao Cup final, how can we not mention that? So Dan Burn, yeah, it's 2 stars. Now the 3 stars, and Craig Hobbs, Newcastle United player of the 24-25 season. I don't know how much prestige that award's actually got. By the way, one player did mention the merit stars to me this season when I bumped into them, so there you go. They are watching, and the winner of this award, now before I reveal his name, I'll show you my workings. It's threefold, and one is quite simply this player, when I went back and added up all the merit stars over the course of the season, come out on top by some distance. 2, I like to pick players who I believe have made a difference. I always say post-match when I'm awarding the merit stars, it's the player who has impacted a game and had the biggest impact on the result. And this, for me, is the player who has had the biggest impact on Newcastle's season being what it is, and I'll revisit the reasons for that. And thirdly, it's the player I've enjoyed watching most this season, the player who has brought me most joy. Any prizes, guys, for guessing who the winner is? Yeah, it's Sandro Tonali. And for me, when I come now to reflect, I am absolutely convinced I've picked the right player. Please tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And I go back to a moment in October, I think it was. We're down at Chelsea. And Newcastle had been beaten that day and beaten quite comprehensively as well. And they had on the pitch, they had the dream midfield trio, the triumvirate of Bruno, Tonali and Joe Linton. That day they were played over, they were played around, they were played under, they were played through. And afterwards in the press conference, I asked 2 questions of Eddie Howe and they were all about the midfield. And he stuck to it. He said that he knew what he wanted those guys to achieve, that it would come good. And we'd seen flashes of it, but it quite clearly wasn't working. And all of the reflections and all of the analysis post-match that day was about Newcastle's midfield. 4 days later, for the first time, he played Sandro Tonali as a number 6 against Chelsea in the League Cup. And that, for me, was the moment Newcastle United's season changed. I don't think they've looked back from that point. Tonali going into the 6 rather than being in the 8. Now in the 8 there was a lot of you guys defending him and said that he would come good, and I got a little bit of stick for criticising him. I never doubted the player or the pedigree of the player. I doubted the role in which he was operating. I didn't think he was doing enough. I did think he was coming in and out of games, existing in moments. Now in the 6 that all changed, and with it, as I've said already, Newcastle United's season changed direction. They very quickly embarked on a winning run. What was it, 19 out of 24 matches they won with Sandro Tonali in the number 6 position. And without that, and this is why I come back to the one of the points I made there as my justification for picking the player of the season. I like players who make a difference, who have done something to alter the course of their destiny and the destiny of the team. And without Sandro Tonali going to number 6, if he'd stayed at 8, I don't think Newcastle would have finished in the top 5. I don't think they would have won the Carabao Cup, and that is why I put him in there at the very top of the podium. It then comes back to the element of enjoyment. Is there a player you can enjoy more and take more satisfaction from than watching Sandro Tonali? I've called him Newcastle's gladiator this season. He is their sword and their shield. Aesthetically, he is just so pleasing. The way he kicks a football, the way he caresses it, the way he runs. He's an alpha male on a football pitch, and we saw that in his debut against Aston Villa 2 years ago. Sadly, that version of him disappeared for too long. Now, there are various reasons as to that. One of them for me was being played in the 8 rather than the 6, but since he's gone back to that domain, he struts. There's an absolute majesty to him, and he scored goals as well. He scored 6 goals this season, and each one of them has been tremendously important. When his team needs him, he really does appear. He never hides. He always wants possession. He's as good going back over as he is going forward. I was talking to a member of coaching staff who said the amount of fires he puts out, that defensive awareness. You know, Bruno Guimaraes in the 6 is very good. He's not as good as Sandro Tonali. He doesn't have that shield, that protective presence of the back 4. Now, for all of the praise we give Dan Burn, I think Dan Burn has benefited from having Sandro Tonali. His season, Dan Burn's season at the start, was good. It wasn't brilliant. It has been since he's had Tonali in front of him there. Everybody's has been, and he's a player for me who makes others better as well. Others go with him, and Burn and Tonali, that's why they're 1 and 2. Bruno Guimaraes has had a good season, the captain. I don't think he's had a good season. I don't think he's had as big an impact on the collective and individuals around him as Burn and Tonali have had. But Tonali is number 1. I just love watching him. He is my favourite player, my favourite footballer in the Premier League, probably world football right now. And the best part of it is he's still a young man. The best is still to come, and taking Newcastle back to that stage next season, the Champions League. Here, we're probably not here, maybe up the road, given the construction job there is to do there. But Sandro Tonali was signed for the Champions League. We didn't really see the best of him in that competition because he did have, now on reflection, the ban and all of the issues, the personal issues he had with him carrying that baggage. He's free of that now. I cannot wait to see him in the Champions League next season. He's been wonderful, magnificent in the Premier League next season. We could see him go to another level again next year, and wow, what a prospect that is. And for Sandro Tonali to have the impact he's had on Newcastle's season, that is the reason he is my player of the season. Now, I said there was an extra special prize at the end of this, and it's man of the season, but I'm going to rip up my own rules. I've always been adamant and strict on this during the season. I don't split the merit stars, I don't split the honours. I'm going to split this one, and rather than man of the season, it's men of the season. And no, one of them isn't the guy who jumped on my shoulder on Wembley Way. As much as I do now have, on reflection, a little bit of an affection for him, as I'm sure you guys do too. First of all, and one of the joint recipients of this award is Dan Burn. How can it not be? To start the season, and I've already touched on some of this already, but there were times last year, not so long ago, when Dan Burn had turned into a bit of a boo boy at left back. He's gone to centre back, and with that, his life has changed. Newcastle's season, the history of Newcastle United has changed for having Dan Burn as a centre back, and to embark on the journey he has now. And I'm here with England this week, and Dan Burn is 20 miles up the road training with England there near Girona, and isn't that deserved? Everything about him there, the goal in the Carabao Cup final for his home town club, the England call-up, missing his brother's wedding this week. His brother's stag do. They're in Newcastle Airport last week when I was jetting off to go to the Champions League final. Poor Dan wasn't there. He's got his England commitments. Quite incredible, really, the story he has embarked on. But the reason he is man of the year or man of the year is that he's done it all with great humility. He's a good man. He's just a round good person to have at the football club, as a squad player, as a starting 11, as an ambassador, probably, hopefully, as a future coach as well. How can Dan Burn not be included in this section? And the joint recipient of this award, how can it not be? Eddie Howe. Yeah, I got a little bit of stick, didn't I, during autumn and in the early weeks of the season after some of my videos. I always get a little bit of stick, and then we realised 3 or 4 months down the line that I was right. Anyway, but no, I was absolutely steadfast, as I always have been, in my defence and support of Eddie Howe. The first time I met him and everything I've seen since, in contact with him, and thankfully I've gotten to know him well in a professional and a personal capacity. He's the real deal. He's the best manager in the country for me, perhaps even the best manager in Europe, the best manager in the world. I've worked with a lot, never have I been more convinced and taken and admiring of the qualities than Eddie Howe has. And to achieve what he has done this season, on the back of no signings in 3 windows, as any other of his rivals. There have been some great managerial performances this season. Arne Slot coming in, fantastic, wonderful. Nuno Espirito Santos done. I know they dropped out the Champions League places, but those 2 there are absolutely worthy of mention. But Eddie Howe, to start the season the way he did, on the back of the turbulence of last year, and I know a lot of you guys didn't want to hear it at the time, and I wrote a lot of pieces that were even knocked down by others as well. They were true, guys, they were right. Last season was a car crash. Amanda and Murdad going against their wishes, against their will. Shouldn't really have happened. Paul Mitchell coming in. The end of an era I wrote last week in the Daily Mail. I'll put the link in the description below the line. Go and read that piece as to all the reasons why he went. It was never going to work. The PSR debacle, Anthony Gordon, the story I broke last summer during the Euros, and Newcastle's attempts to sell him during 24 hours of absolute desperation and panic. All of that left the dressing room massively unsettled entering the season, and that played out. I got a lot of stick for writing those pieces. They were real, guys, they were real. It makes what they subsequently achieved as a group and as a collective, and coming together and shutting out all of that noise and all of that turbulence and everything that was existing above them. What existed above them wasn't good, and it wasn't good enough. They were let down by the club, I thought. And I still think that to a certain degree. The infrastructure around it isn't there. What they have done at the training ground in isolation, and that is being led by Eddie Howe. He's the Pied Piper. Those guys have followed them. It's quite incredible, really. It's a miracle. Not many of the managers would be able to navigate the turbulence he has done this year, to return that trophy, to put them in the Champions League. He's not just, I've given him this prize along with Dan Burn. Really, if we're being honest, Dan Burn's brilliant, but Eddie Howe should be way out in front of everything and everyone. And then you've got the illness. He was poorly, he was really poorly. It was scary, During that period, I was taking calls from folk close to Eddie and speaking about it. I was worried. I think I've mentioned on this video a couple of weeks ago, my dad was ill at the same time, had heart surgery, I didn't have so much of Eddie, I didn't have the emotional bandwidth at the time to cope with all of that was going on. He's someone we think a tremendous amount of, all of us do, and that's because he's a brilliant manager, but he's a good man, and he's a really good man, and that is why, whether it makes any difference to him or anybody else, I don't know. But he's my man of the season. He's Newcastle are really, really lucky to have him. And for me, any club in the world would be lucky to have him. Eddie Howe, man of the season. Okay, now after the fun of the end of the season awards, and I did enjoy them, I hope you did too. Yeah, transfers, not so much fun, I'm afraid. And I'm going to timestamp this at mid-afternoon on Tuesday, June the 3rd, just because something might have developed in the time since, although I'm not holding my breath. And these are conversations I've been having for the last 24, 48, 72 hours. There is nothing happening, and there should be, because it was 9 days ago now that Eddie Howe sat in front of us in the media suite at St James's Park after the last game of the season, and he couldn't have been more clear if he stood on the top of Gray's monument and announced to the hierarchy the need for speed, the need to be dynamic, to get deals done quickly, because good players don't hang around forever. Well, here we are, and Newcastle are seeing some targets now. They might not be the very top targets, but certainly players who were on the list, they're coming and they're going. And what that does tell you is that other clubs have got their act together. They have got the business in order. What have Newcastle done in those 9 days? They've lost a sporting director. Come on now, I wrote a piece about 8 or 9 months ago in October when I was asked the question, do PIF still care? And of course they care, of course they do, you know, but are they still hands-on? Are they still there driving things and directing things? Now, if I was answering that question now 8 or 9 months on, it wouldn't be a no, but I would certainly put it back at whoever asked the question of me. Why have they allowed Newcastle to enter one of the most important transfer windows in the club's recent history with an outgoing chief executive and an outgoing sporting director? I could have told you a year ago Paul Mitchell wasn't going to work at Newcastle. How come they've arrived at now before deciding it's time for him to go now they've dressed it up as mutual, whatever it may be? Let's not go into the whys and wherefores of whose call it was, but Paul Mitchell is gone. He's going to work, June. What? Really? An outgoing member of staff privy to the club's secret and then a workings? Work in an absolutely pivotal month? Right? I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought, my words. I don't often do that, but it just captures how balmy and how ludicrous I think. And that's before you get to a chief executive who they've known is going since September. Come on, it's not good enough. It's letting Eddie Howe down. It's letting others down in the recruitment team. They deserve more than this. They deserve better. The football club, you guys, deserve more than that. It's not best practice. It is far from ideal. From what I gather now, we don't really know what's happening. People are reaching out to me, intermediaries in the game. Who's the best person to contact at the club? Who do you think is best to go to? I don't know. Why are you asking me? There's a bit of a vacuum there, a bit of a void at the moment. It's not good and it's not good enough. I think I've used that phrase twice now. I could probably go on to use it again later in the video. Now, I revealed last night exclusively at Mail Sport that David Hopkinson, the Canadian, formerly of Real Madrid, is going to be coming in, or so they hope. He's the preferred candidate. It's still yet to be signed off. By the time it's signed off, it could be the January window. I am joking. I hope I mean that as a joke. But, you know, yeah, he looks on paper, looks a very good appointment. One who was more driven towards improving commercial revenues than a footballing CEO who's going to come in. Now, Newcastle still do have a little bit of a vacuum, a huge vacuum above Eddie Howe of real football knowledge and expertise. I hate this phrase, but C-suite level. That's what they need. I said this 3 years ago. They should have gone out and got Brian Marwood in week 1 of the takeover. Somebody like that. That's what they're missing. That's what they need. And at the moment, Eddie Howe has been almost left alone, really. I feel for him. Everything I said there before about Eddie Howe being the man of the season, and Newcastle lucky to have him as a little cameo there. I'm not going to edit that out. Yeah, you know, they're lucky to have him, but he deserves better. Newcastle should be acting now. They should be more decisive. They've had not just one window, not just 6 months. They've had 3 windows to prepare for this day when they knew they would have the money to spend. They know what they want. They know what they need. Go and do it. What are they after in terms of names, positions? Well, the goalkeeper, James Trafford, I'm told, absolutely still at the very top of that list. What's the hold-up? What's the delay? Centre-back, Mark Gee, right-sided centre-half. Now, yes, they like him, and if there was a deal to be done there at a reasonable price, I think they probably would. But the more they watch Gee, the more they look at Gee, there was just that little seed of doubt there. And I know why. You know, I've watched him for England. I think he's good. I think he's very good. I think under Eddie Howe, he would improve and be every player does. Gee's got the potential there, but I do still think he's just missing that little bit of aggression he needs as a centre-half. On the right wing, Brian Mbeumo, well, he's going to Manchester United now. Matthias Cunha, 2 players they absolutely liked. You know, what was Mbeumo as high at the very top as the list as we might think? I don't necessarily think so, but he's there. He was there or thereabouts. Could they have done a deal for them if Mbeumo wanted it and the price and the numbers were right? Yeah, I think they could have done. Kingsley Conan linked today, Bayern Munich. No, not at those wages. Newcastle aren't in that sort of market. Who else is there? There's Anthony Langer down at Nottingham Forest. Yeah, they like him. Could they revisit that down the line? Maybe. Not one for now. I think there's a certain little bit of redrawing being done now because, quite incredibly, having known where they were at, I don't think they do know where they're at now. And that's not good. It's not good enough. That's probably the right place to finish. But apart from that, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please hit like, comment and subscribe. And who knows, we might just be back here next season. It won't be in the group stages by the time they get that done, but it might just be in the last stages. And just to finish, I hope that last 5 minutes wasn't too negative. There's only one place to finish, and that is to toast what was a brilliant, wonderful, incredible season. Congratulations to Eddie Howe. Congratulations to his players, Sandro Tonali in particular, and congratulations and thank you, a huge thank you to you guys for watching. I love it. I love the interaction. It's so pure. You know, when I said a couple of weeks ago my dad was poorly and my mum's also not been, she's been in hospital as well. You know, the messages below the line, the genuine, the heartfelt, and they mean the world, they really do. It's just been the best season, the season of ups and how strong is this be? A season of ups and downs on the pitch and off the pitch. But I've loved every minute of it. And we've got it all to go again next season when we'll be taking this selfie stick on the road, in the air rather. And I'll leave it there for now. I'm going to finish my beer, edit the video. I love it. One of the best things I've enjoyed this season is I go to the Trent, wherever it is, if I'm on my travels, I sit and have a beer and I edit the video and I put it together. It's I love it, I really do. Such a pure, brilliant platform this is, and thank you for all of your support across Daily Mail, Mail Plus. You know, the guys who are all clicking and signing up on Mail Plus, the numbers are wonderful, incredible. It takes everyone down in London, you know, we're so appreciative of all that support, and I hope the content we're putting out there, I hope you're enjoying it. I think it's good. I hope you do too. Comment below the line. I'll see you again over the summer. Okay, take care guys, have the best summer and stay safe. Bye bye.